I can't even...
The console has locked!
So now we have to actually restart the system. Oh my god, man. Well, there's a patch coming for this game soon.
The hate was so strong, it destroyed the paper.
Cena killed, like, he put his fist through his back. He actually murdered him, and they had to cut the broadcast.
What's Cena doing? Look at this pose!
Alright, so we're gonna have to just...
Cena looks like he's doing the French mistake.
Hello, fans and readers alike. Welcome to episode 6 of the Writer's Block. And I'm kind of upset that it wasn't episode 7, because then everything would have held down perfectly. My name is P-Dog. Alongside me, TheAireaidLord once again. And we're doing something a little different this time, that we're going to do every once in a while. And it's almost like a subsection of To the Writer's Block, because we're not going to talk about writing or anything. Well, we are, but we're not going to talk about how-tos and stuff. We're not going to go on, you should do this, you should do that, blah, blah, blah. We're going to do a dissection. Okay, I've got the frog right here, and I've got the scalpels and stuff. No, not that kind of dissection. We're going to dissect an internet series. Something that anyone that's watching this can go and watch right now. And so we figured, to mark the 1 year anniversary of the final episode this was released, we are going to do Project 7, which I'm sure a lot of you are big fans of, because if you're here on this channel, you've probably heard DSP's name being thrown around every once in a while. Well, you're probably familiar with the series that he did. It started in 2010, a 3-episode prologue. Then the real actual series came in last year. It ran from January until this day last year, the 23rd of June, and there's 4 episodes released. So 3 prologue, 4 normal. So now we got 7 episodes of Project 7. We're not gonna, do it minute by minute, but we're gonna give a general overview and then look into each episode individually and tell you. We're not gonna talk to you about everything. We're not gonna say, oh, here's a nice camera angle that we used or whatever. We're just gonna focus on the 2 things that we've been talking about these few episodes of the Writer's Block, and that's story or plot and characters. So we're gonna look at those 2 main areas in Project 7 and how it went down quite well. Now, the reason why we're doing this is because we kind of figured that characters is over and done with, and we didn't want to start a new series because something big is happening next week.
Yes, and we'll save it till the end of the episode to reveal to you what that is, because...
Well, if people are going to endure the entire episode, but we have a secret surprise.
Yes, it's an exclusive, it's something that's never happened on the Writer's Block before. It's a new edition, and I'm very happy and very pleased that it's happening. We'll get to that at the end. But first of all, I think, obviously, we should talk about Project 7, the dissection of it, and everything that Pete just explained to us. So, basically...
Project 7 episode 1, or not episode 1, episode 0.3, I guess.
The prologue. So basically, just to give you a little background, so Darkside Phil Burnell, he's a personal friend of mine. He's also somebody that Pete and I followed over YouTube and stuff. He has a YouTube presence. If you're a fan of mine for my gameplay, you probably know him, because I've done lots of different co-op gameplay with him on my channel before. In terms of series and writing and creativeness, Project 7 was his first opportunity to branch out and do something different. Now, Project 7 originally started as a unique idea for him because it was something different, because at the time, in early 2010 when he started this, he had been doing playthroughs of different games, and this was a step in a different direction for him and his channel. So basically, the premise, just briefly, of Project 7 was that Phil was doing a channel update, and all of a sudden, he was talking about a lot of bad things that were going on for him at the time, and then all of a sudden, he gets interrupted by this presence from, somewhere. You don't know where he is, and it's this guy wearing, like, a t-shirt over his face, and his name is Deathface. He's a villainous character, somebody that has a grudge against DSP. You don't really know why. And basically, in the first episode, he kind of traps DSP in this environment and tells him that he's going to play the game that he hates more than any other video game he's ever played in his entire life, and that he's going to force him to play it and make him suffer because he has a grudge against him. So this premise is set up in the beginning episode, and the first thing that you want to know in the episode is, what's the game? What's the big secret? Because that was the big thing. Because at the time, most of Phil's fans were following him for his gameplay. So the notion that, oh, now Phil's going to play this really, really, really bad game. And having talked to Phil behind the scenes, Phil told me the original idea for Project 7, and I told Pete this, and he actually thought this was a good idea, and Pete can elaborate a little bit more as to why he thought that. Project 7 was originally supposed to be Phil doing a playthrough of this really bad game with the villain jumping in every once in a while for commentary to fuck him up. Maybe Phil gets to a really hard part of the game and then the guy intervenes and says, gee, I'm going to take out your power, or I'm going to do something to fuck you up, and it's going to mess up the whole thing. So that was the original idea for Project 7, and this was a series that was supposed to go on for the course of 2010. Now, there were a couple of things that delayed it. Phil was going to do an episode later on in 2010, but unfortunately his Dark Side Phil channel ended up getting hacked. And there were a lot of different circumstances in 2010 that kind of prevented him from ever returning to the series. It was heavily, heavily, heavily requested by his fans over 2011. And finally, at the end of 2011, he actually decided to jump back into the series because he was comfortable with his job being partnered with Machinima, and he was in a position where he could actually start the series up again. But, so Pete, explain why you thought this idea for Project 7, the original take on Project 7, why you liked it.
Well, it was going to be interesting because if you remember, Phil had two different categories of content. He had gaming videos, and he had like not really vlogs, but more of like IRL videos, like in real life videos, where it's either a channel update or later on 2010 it would have been like DSP tries, like Cooking with the King, vlog videos where he's away, like to New York or to wherever he's going. Nashville, he happened in 2010, and so. But the biggest one he did do where it required like editing was The Hateful Truth, which was really big at that time, and at that point was still going really strong because he'd done one on Alan Wake, and you know, like in 2010 they did a few other ones. Like I'm talking about the first half of 2010 because the second half he started, you know, being a bit more just simple about it. But I mean, at that time it was almost like he was going to combine the two together, the gameplay and then like the kind of the witty humor that he does for his IRL videos and like his editing ones. And so it would have been a really nice mix. Depending on, I don't really know how the game, because we don't really know what exactly the game was. Yeah. So we don't know whether it was going to like implement that much, you know, like how much it would be implemented in and how it was going to go. But it was still going to be quite a neat idea, and he may have done it for a few other games, you know, had that been the choice. But anyway, so yeah, he did do the other episodes, but I guess to begin with, we'll go over quite briefly. I don't think we have to go over them very like individually, but I mean, I think very briefly we should talk about the prologue in terms of what we've been talking about. So that's pretty much the premise of like the background as to where Project 7 came about. But I think now we should dissect it as writers do into the bare bones story and character aspect of it. So in the original Project 7, the story was kind of ambiguous because it wasn't exactly like, oh, this is the story of Darkseid Phil. It was just kind of like, it's almost like just a conversation between the two of them. So there wasn't much actual plot to go into, apart from the fact that, because in these episodes it was kind of like a one-off thing where it was just kind of like when you didn't really know what was going on. It was very, very mysterious, because you didn't know what the game was, you didn't know who Deathface was, you didn't know if this was canon or not, you didn't know whether like this was actually going to apply into DSP's actual YouTube account. However, it was really revealed that it wasn't, because he continued doing gameplay and stuff. That just kind of seemed like a really odd one-off. But yeah, like the story was kind of weird. The characters, there's only two characters in it. There was Deathface and Phil. And Phil kind of plays his own, like in himself, he kind of plays like a more, he kind of emphasizes the parts that he likes, that he wants to emphasize people to know about him. And so he's very cocky, he's very egotistical, he's very fearless, well, unless he's faced with the game, but he isn't afraid to like just ignore Deathface in some cases. Like in one case he's like dancing to music, he's like sleeping, he's on the phone to John, you know, like he's just doing all this stuff just to be like ignorant towards Deathface, because he likes to like take jabs at like common cliches. So at one point he just outright says, oh, you know, you're wearing a t-shirt on your face, and he's like, oh, this is a war mask. But he's like, no, it's a t-shirt or whatever. So you can tell that he isn't afraid to just call out the stuff. So it isn't something that's meant to be taken completely seriously, as Chris said.
Yeah. So
it isn't something that's completely like deadly serious, and isn't something that the fans should really be enticed in, because it's just a little fun little off-topic thing, like little side content. And so that's why he doesn't really take that situation seriously, and that's why like the editing and stuff isn't exactly, you know, like the best. It was very, you could tell that he didn't really put that much, like, he put work into it, but you could tell that it wasn't of, like, a professional quality. You couldn't tell that this was, like, you could tell that this was just something that he just did, you know, like the t-shirt thing, you commonly see that he uses the same text, that, like, some of the direct cuts are kind of, like, sloppy.
Yeah.
And so, but I mean, that's why it was so enjoyable, because it was so out of the blue and so random. But yeah, like, if you look at it from a writing standpoint, it's just kind of like boggling, because it doesn't really make much sense. But you can kind of understand the context as to why it was so popular. I think whenever we get to the actual Project 7 itself, like the actual episodes, then we can talk a bit more about plot and stuff and characters. But I mean, Phil is just kind of like himself in a way. Deathface, obviously, he's very vengeful and he's very, like, aggressive and very, like, negative towards Phil, and he wants to make his life a living hell. You still don't really know why, you don't understand his motives. So, you kind of put it, I guess I might as well, if I was to put it into the rules, prop rules, this is literally the easiest thing I could ever do. Phil is the hero, and Deathface is the villain.
Yeah.
Who'd have thought
Simple
it? Who'd have thunk
protagonist-antagonist setting. It's two characters in the beginning, and there's nothing really, you know, else added in there, you know.
And then for story, because it was so ambiguous, like, I guess you could say, if I was to put it into the equilibrium that I was talking about in the plot episodes, the starting equilibrium would be Phil doing his gameplay as per usual, you know, blah blah blah. Then the break in equilibrium would be Deathface actually playing the game, like Deathface coming in, locking him in his condo and forcing him to play the game. The chain of events would be what happens in the episodes whenever Phil is trying to talk his way out of it. He's just trying to be, like, obviously Phil isn't, because it isn't to be taken that seriously, Phil isn't like, he isn't urgently trying to get out of the condo, he isn't like crying or anything, but I mean, you can just tell that he doesn't really care that much. So the chain of events is kind of like weird, it's just kind of ambiguous, whereas you don't really understand why Phil isn't really taking it that seriously, but then you can kind of understand that it's because it isn't, the series itself isn't meant to be taken seriously, and Phil's just trying to reflect that.
Exactly.
And so sometimes Phil's actions translate how the fans react. Like some of Deathface's, you know, his most common punishment stuff that he says he's gonna kick him so hard that even his children will feel it.
Yeah.
He's gonna do all this stuff, and it's all the cliche stuff, and so Phil's reaction to it is how we react to it, where it's like groan, this kind of stuff.
I mean, if you'll like it if you're a fan of his content, but at the same time you might be like, oh, this is kind of over the top. So, I mean, if you are a fan of Phil's, you're going to like his jokes more. But for the common person, you know, I don't know how many times he's had this experiment where new people have come on the channel and they've seen his humor. Some people are attracted to it. Like, I mean, hell, we were attracted to his humor the first time we saw him. I saw him in 2008, Pete later from his dad. So, you know, I mean, obviously new people can get into his humor and stuff, but that's the whole thing that was that was the point that was driven across at the beginning. Project 7, the prologue was this kind of cliche kind of thing, you know, from the very, very beginning. Project 7 was kind of this cliche kind of, it's serious in that Phil's being held in his condo, but here's a joke about it, and they were all inside jokes. Would you agree, Pete? They're all inside jokes. Like, Phil starts playing a remix from one of his fans in the video, and he's doing dances, and he's talking to John Rambo. Like, you wouldn't know who John Rambo is otherwise. So,
but I would say that the prologue was a bit tame on it. It's not until you get to some of the references in the actual Project 7 itself, especially episode 1, like, that was literally, like, that strived on the inside jokes. But I mean, I think in this one, you did have the odd one, but I don't think it was really cumbersome that people would be unattracted to it. Like, you kind of, I'm guessing that if you didn't really know who Phil was, you'd think that he was a complete douche, and you'd think, he is, like, this guy thinks he's all cool and stuff, he thinks he's the bee's knees, and you kind of understand that is Phil's, like, ego at that point. That's how he builds him up to look like. And nothing is more prominent in this series than that point. The Phil is like, he's all cocky. He isn't afraid of anything that Deathface tries to do to him. And that's how you get to the actual episode itself. And it's funny because we were actually pointing out that in like whenever he's like kneeling down next to the TV, like, you can actually tell that Phil's actually trying his best to reflect some emotion, which is something that was kind of shocking, because I mean, we were saying just beforehand that he doesn't really take it that seriously, but I mean, in some of those cases, whenever he's like, no, don't show, like, even though it's as trivial as looking at a game screen, he still, like, shows this emotion that he's all scared about it. So I mean, you do have those kind of like serious moments, but they're once again, they're more so in episode
And the physical motions of his body too. Like we were even laughing at the head nod, like where he moves his head. He's like, "What did you just say?" Like he moves his body and his tone to the way that things are supposed to be. Well, it was almost like he knew how to act before. And I think when he went into the newer Project 7 episodes, knowing that it was a cliche, cheesy series, like that was always the thing. Like whenever someone criticized the acting on his videos, he'd always say, "Oh, it's cheesy. It's meant to be cheesy." And stuff. So I think when he acted, he went in with that mindset, knowing it would be cheesy, so he didn't try. Like, I'm not saying he didn't try, but to an extent, he didn't try with trying to act like he did in the previous ones.
Yeah, it seemed like he tried to put a lot more work into the prologue, which is kind of funny because you see the prologue and you're like, this is so like pathetic whenever you compare it to the previous one. But in a way, it kind of seems as if like Phil, like that was his brainchild. That was the thing that he was like really proud of, because he made it all entirely on his own, and it was something that, he didn't have a camera crew, he didn't have other people like Howard and John to help him out. That was all him. All 3 episodes was just all him. Everything that was done there was all his. And so, I guess you kind of get that kind of like personal pride whenever you watch them back. You can kind of tell that Phil's quite pleased with himself, and because they're a huge hit as well. Because like I was saying before, they were like a cult hit where people were all of a sudden like, this is so weird, it's so bad, but I love it. That obviously was going to be a big morale boost, and it was a big motive for why he brought it back. So I guess, do you think that would be it for the prologue, or do you think there's any other, points?
Well, I mean, there was, other than, the references, like we said, I'm trying to think in the last one where he went on that big, he's trying to, I think Pete would agree, the main focus of the first 3 prologue episodes was on the game. What's the game? Because most of episode 3, or of the prologue, like that little mini series, those prologue 3 mini videos, it was all about what the game was. He goes on this spree of trying to give hints, like there's no Halo on my head, and then he goes on a rant saying all these bad things, like he's like Dan Affleck, Bill Murray, like he goes on this big thing trying to give hints and clues as to what it is. And even at the end of the episode, it says, "Did you follow the clues?" and all this stuff. And then it says, "Next up, Project 7, Episode 1." Like after that. Because the goal was to do, like I said, Phil's original idea, which was to do a playthrough of this really bad game and have this kind of acting on the side to reinforce it. So that's really all I think we have to say about the prologue. But the prologue did its job, and that's why Project 7 was so demanded after that. All the videos was just, most of Phil's videos, and he admitted this in the fact video we watched, the frequently asked questions video that he put up. The number one thing over the course of that year, the most demanded thing was Project 7. When's it coming back? Even on gameplay videos that had nothing to do with Project 7, people were spamming asking when it was coming back. So people wanted it, and they liked it. It was something unique. That was the thing. His fans could see the uniqueness in it, and they wanted that kind of content more and more and more. So,
but I think it's kind of a case of, it's weird that we didn't even know what he was going to put out with the next Project 7. Because we didn't know if it was going to be like a playthrough, jump cut type thing, whether it was going to be the same as what he was doing for the conversations with Deathface, or whether it was going to be what it eventually became, which is almost like how does he describe it? I'm trying to remember how he described Project 7. If he was to say
a B movie-ish, he was saying like a B movie-ish cheesy comedy flick.
Yeah, and like comedy gaming type.
Yeah, he was saying the best parts of my humor and John Rambo's humor and Howard's humor. It's like all these different pieces of humor that are put into this through our acting and gaming talents, I think was the way he put it. Basically, a contemplation of different things that you like about Phil's atmosphere and his channel and stuff, kind of put into an acted setting. And
so, Project 7, the official series, it's a lot more straightforward, I think, than the prologue. The prologues is just so full of mystery. In the actual episodes, then I think we might as well start calling them the actual, the prologues is out of the way. Now we're just going to start saying episode 1, episode 2, episode 3, episode 4, as in the actual episode, so there's no more confusion between what's the prologue and what's the actual. From here on in, we're just going to talk about the official episodes. So, we have these episodes going on.
Yep.
Initially, the story is kind of, we didn't really know what the story was going from episode 1. Episode 2 was a very lengthy, it was a very long time until they explained about the gaming parts thing.
Yes.
The first half of the episode kind of didn't really make much since, well, it did in a way, but they kind of overblown. I think a lot of people agree with that. And then episode 3 and 4 were prime examples of what the series will become. And people would say that episode 3 was the start of finding out, like, what is Project 7? Like, now we actually know what it's going to be. Because in the previous episodes we were kind of like, we don't really know where this is going, and now we kind of know what it's going to be. So, basically, I guess to give it a very quick, like, overview of what the story is DSP has been trapped in this condo for two years now, playing this really bad game. Obviously, like I said, it's non-canon. Like, obviously, he wasn't trapped in his condo playing this game for 2 years, because otherwise how would he be making videos for YouTube? So obviously this is like a fictional storyline on the side. So Phil's been trapped in this condo playing these games, or playing this game, Title 7, for 2 years, and Howard and John Rambo decide to finally break him out and try to find out what's going on. Once Howard gets in and finds out that DSP's been playing this game and he's been hypnotized to play it, then he's able to make him come to. And then it's kind of funny, because after episode 1, whenever they get to Howard, I believe it's Howard's house that they get to, at the very end of the episode, DSP's about to announce what the game is, but then afterwards, he forgets about it. Like, that's it. You don't hear anything about the game 7 itself. And so the title of the series is kind of confusing after that, but I digress. So then you discover, like, after a very lengthy examples as to how DSP's lost his gaming powers and Deathface now has them, they find out through a magic camera that Andre has from Perspective Pact, of course, as blatantly said in episode 2. DSP, John Rambo, and Howard have to go to different gaming worlds across all kinds of genres in order to get a piece of DSP's gaming powers out. So the two examples that they show are that DSP got his action gaming powers from a Metal Gear Solid, Call of Duty-esque world, and he was able to get his platformer, retro type gaming powers from the Mushroom Kingdom, pretty much.
Yeah, the Mushroom Kingdom.
And then at the very end of episode 4, they kind of revealed that he was going to get his survival horror gaming skills back from a haunted house.
Yes.
That was going to be from other places, but that never happened. And
unfortunately, we'll talk a little bit about why the series ended up the way it is. I mean, most of this stuff is public, but because and I'll say this later on, I was actually supposed to be an actor in this series in Project 7. I spoke with Phil quite in depth about how we were, and this was a year ago at this time, in June 2012, before we went to Too Many Games 2012, we pretty much hardcore were talking about, I remember I offered my house as the haunted house, and we were kind of just going over how we would make this 5th episode. Phil bought props at the store for it. It was supposed to be a Halloween-based episode. It was supposed to air for Halloween. And also, I don't know, a little insider thing, episode 6 was supposed to be a holiday episode. It was supposed to be a Christmas episode. So I'm not sure what he was planning with that, but that's all I know.
I don't know what gaming series he's going to get from a Christmas episode, but
but that was supposed
to get a break or something.
Yeah, that was supposed to be the original plan. Episode 5 would be Halloween, this horror-based thing, and then episode 6 would be the holiday Christmassy themed episode. That was supposed to be the original plan before things kind of went south, and we'll talk about that later. So what we're going to do is basically, as we've already started doing, dissecting each episode 1, 2, 3, 4, which are the only episodes that they have been released. And then at the end, we'll kind of just summarize our knowledge of the things we've been talking about in the writer's blog and how they relate to each of the things that we talked about and stuff. So Pete probably already went through episode 1 for the most part and stuff, but we'll look at the specifics of the things that we liked and the things that we didn't like throughout the episode. I think, should I address maybe the acting of, like, the characters? Should I go?
I guess it's inevitable that we're going to have to talk about it at some point.
Yeah,
so
the overall presentation of this episode, basically, in how that, you had 3 people pretty much acting. You had Phil, John Rambo, and Howard. Then you had Deathface, which was just, Phil or John's voice modulated. But Deathface was always spot on because of the modulation, and you couldn't see his face. But the other, like Phil, I know, again, as we mentioned, Phil's goal for this was to make it a cheesy series. So it was never really gonna be this ultra serious, it wasn't gonna be like a drama, like what Arby and the Chief has become now, like this drama kind of series where each episode is character-centric and everything's kind of revolved around what's going on. It's funny because there are parts of the Project 7 that are revolve around a plot. Like, let's talk about the plot, because one of our previous Writer's Block episodes was about the plot. As Pete said, Phil's stuck in his condo after 2 years, non-canon, and John and Howard have to break him out, And, it's kind of weird because, like, they go to his house and they make jokes like, John, how'd you get here so fast? Then they go up to the door, and there's always an opportunity for a joke. Again, the series is comedy-driven, so there's always an opportunity. Like, John's trying to break down the door, and Howard's making fun about his, oh, that gym membership's working for you, and they're joking about that. But then, I'm going to say this, they're banging on the door, but Deathface said something. He said all those, in the prologue, he said all the doors were rigged to explode. But then they bang on the door, and all of a sudden it opens to this portal. Like, when was the portal explained? Like, was there always a portal? Like, is that how he got in? Like it was kind of weird. Like, I didn't really understand that.
It seemed as if the two of them weren't linked together.
Yeah.
It seemed as if the stuff, like, apart from the very first shot, which is of Phil sitting down playing the game, that was the only thing, and also the beard is kind of not really explained. But, well, again, no, sorry, he didn't have a sense of shape.
Yeah, over time. Yeah, over time. Yeah, it's aged over time.
Sorry, that was a fluff on my part. But but no, I see what he's, because it seemed as if the two of them were like different things. Where apart from that opening sequence, that was it. Like that was the only thing that correlated. The rest of it was just kind of like a new beast. It's as if it wasn't even like the original Project 7. Like this Project 7 was a completely different thing, which is what Chris said. Like the original intention was to be a playthrough, and now it's this, comedy series where they go to different gaming worlds.
With anything, I like continuity. Like, let's go to the Orb for an example, because we said this. I actually said this. I said this in the last. I almost said Project 7. I almost said this in the last Writer's Block. Sorry, not Project 7. The last Writer's Block episode. I said this. Remember how at the end I was toying with the notion of the cloning thing? Remember we were talking about how it's central to the ending of the book, so I need to put it in the book somewhere. So I don't want it to just spawn out of midair. So Noah at the end of the book is like, oh, you're a clone of somebody. But why would that just be random? Like, I have to have that somewhere else in the book, so it's explained. So it's an idea that the audience understands, so that when they come to it at the end, it's a shocker. Like, I think Pete used an analogy in the last Writer's Block, saying about, like, Superman in this battle, and then he throws a meteorite. I think this was your example. He threw a meteorite, and it's like, oh, you have this meteorite power? Like, I didn't know that. Like, yes, I have this power, and I'm going to kill... Like,
the audience feels cheated, because they're like, well, we didn't know about that, and the audience always has to be right. That's like the key thing. The audience always has to be on the know and stuff.
Yeah,
unless you want it to be a shocker, but that has to make sense.
That's a big thing for this series. You kind of feel cheated, and there's a big thing. Pete was telling me this, his big pet peeve with episode 4. You feel cheated because there's things that aren't continued. And it might seem fluff. Like, if you were to ask Phil, he'd be like, oh, that's just, who cares? Like, come on, man. Like, why? Well,
of course, he's the writer and he's, like, the main developer, so he's obviously going to be biased towards his own product.
Yes.
So he isn't going to say, oh, well, I do agree that this is not very good. Like, he's obviously going to be, like, stand by it, especially during it, whenever it was being made, and he was praising it to be, like, the next best thing since sliced bread.
Yeah.
And so, it was kind of like, and you commonly see, like, arguments in the YouTube comments, and even on the forums, of people saying, I didn't like this episode because blah, 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 and then there'd be, like, a huge argument, another war going on.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I mean, obviously, writers, just like me, like, criticism, it can be taken in different ways. People have criticized my books in some form. Like, I remember, I don't know if I've ever mentioned this. This is actually the first time I'm mentioning this. I actually signed up for a website 2 years ago called autonomy.com. It's a website where you can put your book up, and the top rate, it's almost like YouTube, because you can rate books. Like, you can rate a book and like a book and share a book. And the more likes you get on your book, the more it gets noticed, and the more people can read it. And I guess if your book gets liked enough, then Amazon.com actually goes to the website and picks out different books to publish, and those people get actually published. But it's like YouTube. It's just the popularity system. Like, oh, give me likes and thumbs up. Like, it's just the popular and how you abuse the popularity system. So that's why I don't agree with autonomy.com. But, in a way, that's a form of, promotion. When I gave my book on that website, basically, there was like a 40-year-old guy. Remember, he said, oh, I'll share my book with you if you share yours. I shared The Orb to him, and he read it. And this is a 40-year-old guy who's been writing longer than me. Like, he has way more experience than I did, and he actually liked it. He's like, oh, I really like this story. He's like, but here's just the little changes with grammar, and why does this not make sense, and this. But his critiques were just little, and I actually agreed with some of his critiques. Maybe not all of them, but some of them I agree with. When people criticize my work, I'm open to the criticisms. If I don't agree with the criticisms, I'll kindly say I don't agree with it. But I think Phil has to learn that, to how to now he can apply this to YouTube as well, hint hint, wink wink, but taking criticism with the writing that he does with his Project 7 and stuff, if someone's criticizing, oh, you didn't act very well, oh, this, but of course, if it's just blatant, like, you're horrible, your whole series sucks, that's not criticism. But if it's constructive criticism, like, I didn't like how we weren't told about the like, why is the doors, I thought they were rigged with explosives, why is there all of a sudden a portal that just comes out of nowhere? You know, that's a criticism for this thing, and you can and Phil can explain what his thinking was, or say, you know what, you're right. So
well, one of the things that he always criticizes is, oh, if you're going to constructively criticize me, I want you to say what you would say. But they're doing the job for you then.
Yeah, you're the writer. You're the writer. Like, why are you passing off your ability to make this series onto the viewer? They're the viewer. They're the audience. You, as a writer, if you know this is what you do for a web series, you strive to know how you can make your product better, how you can improve each time. If you're putting that off on your audience and complaining and saying that no, it's perfect the way it is, that's almost what it feels like. Phil's saying nope, it's perfect the way it is. Don't need any changes.
Yeah, look how much I've done for this. So you should take it with a pinch of salt. Yeah. I got sunburned. My voice got shot. So that's my excuse.
Oh, some little inside references there, which we'll explain. But yeah, that doesn't make for viewership. Like, you're not going to bring people in. You're pushing them away the more you do that, unfortunately, just in my opinion, and Pete would agree too. So
obviously, we just went on the usual writer's block tangent, where that has nothing to do with the story or the
writer's tangent. I think we'll call it the writer's.
You might as well just put that up, like warning, writer's tangent ahead. But
there's at least one in every single episode.
There's our one. So there's our at least one. So,
but for episode 1, I think what I was saying before was just talking about episode 1, where you have inside references where Howard almost knocks over Phil's camera with the not the Wiimote, the PlayStation Move controller. And, the acting, again, it's cheesy. It's not really great. Phil is trying to recover, like, as they're going through the portal. Like, you can see that the acting's not that great. I will give Howard a lot of credit in episode 1. His acting was good. Like, the face expressions.
I think Howard was the best in every episode. Well, excluding episode 3, but that's a given. Yeah. But I think he was probably, like... So Howard, if you're watching this, I know you're not, but if you're watching this, credit to you. You were,
he did a good job. Yeah, he did a good job with the acting, and for not having any acting experience, just like Rambo and Phil, that's pretty freaking good. So I had to give not Rambo, Howard credit. Rambo, I think, and Pete would agree with this. It seemed like it was almost like a lot of what he was doing, he was a joke. Like, as he was acting, it seemed like there was a joke behind the words he was saying constantly. And this is his persona on his YouTube channel and such, so it's not much of a surprise.
I am the Ramboja leader, etc.
Yeah. I mean, that's his John Rambo Presents YouTube channel and what he does on his own stuff. But when he's in a web series, I think he didn't get the notion that he had to change his persona. I think that was everything he does is so centric to, his whole Rambo thing, kind of laid back, just kind of making the off comment.
Even in episode 3, they make a direct reference to him being Rambo.
And then Rambo makes his own joke, like he's on the phone as they're trying to Howard and Phil are trying to get out of Phil's place. Rambo's on the phone. What are you talking about? Shitty acting, shitty voice thing, and that was a comment that a random YouTuber made on John's thing, and then the shittiness.
And he made it big,
yeah, and then it was a big thing for his whole YouTube channel. So he implemented one of his own memes into Project 7, which I guess that's good for those insider references we were talking about earlier. But honestly,
once again, it didn't really like. I think it was good because it wasn't like a direct thing. It was a very off comment thing. He just said it, during that one scene. So I mean, anyone that didn't get it, like, they probably would have been a bit like, what? But I mean, like, they probably still would laugh because it was like, oh, haha, he's making fun of the thing he's in. And then people, like, insiders that would get there would be like, he's making fun of the thing he's in. And I remember that because of whatever convention he went to that he did that for. But, actually, I will give Rambo some credit because in Schnozzman and Hole Punch, he improves a lot in Schnozzman and Hole Punch, I think.
Perhaps, maybe we'll have an episode where we decide.
We might just do Schnozzman.
Yeah, we might just, but that's for a later episode. We won't talk about that right now. But yeah, so that was Rambo, and then Phil, I could see making an attempt in some parts to do good really well acting and stuff, but obviously it fell flat in some areas. It was kind of obvious that he was just saying it.
Some of the stuff he did, like, it seemed kind of improv, but it just didn't seem that well. Like, I'll give a direct example. In episode 3, I believe. Yes, I think it was episode 3. Whenever they were in the portals, and then Howard was because the running gag was that Rambo isn't affected by the portals that they're in whenever they're traveling the gaming worlds. Whereas Howard and Phil, at first they were reacting to it, and then in episode 3 it was revealed that they were only acting, like they were only like joking about it, or didn't really mean. I don't really get the actual reference of it, but basically Howard says, "Hey Phil, what's the point in this?" And then Phil, I think they should have stopped it there, but then Phil looks directly at the camera and goes, and like raises his shoulders, and I'm just like, you don't have to like enforce something. And then similarly in another part of episode 3, he shoots the OJ clone in the face. Like, it's funny because the OJ clone's shooting inside like a cardboard box, and you see DSP's gun like in his arm coming out from like a wall and shooting him.
Yeah.
And I mean that's all well and good, but then Phil, being Phil himself, and his, like being the ego Phil that's in that series, he comes out of the wall, raises his other arm to a fist and like nods at the camera like, yeah, look at me, I just did that. And it's just kind of like, okay.
The other
like,
thing that I hated, my biggest pet peeve out of all 4 episodes, is in episode 2, when there's a knock on the door and Howard opens the door and Howard turns to the camera and says, "Oh look, it's Andre from YouTube.com/RespectThePack. Come on in." And then Andre says like, "What's up, guys?" It's almost like it's just like you're like that you're watching. It almost breaks the 4th dimension. Have you ever heard that saying? I think that's the point. It was supposed to break the 4th wall. Yeah. Yeah, it was weird. It's like I don't like that. But
once again, no consistency in it. Like that was completely
one-off.
That, you didn't see in any other episode. There was no consistency in that, like breaking the 4th. It was just maybe Phil would argue that would be a part. That was it was so random that it was funny, but at the same time, like it still just kind of feels like okay. Like once again, the audience feels kind of cheated because they're like, well, why do you acknowledge us but then not acknowledge us? And that can go both for DSP always looking directly at the camera. Maybe that's a bad habit of his after doing so many videos looking at the camera. Or Howard's one-off comment on the episode 2 and whatnot. So, I mean, that's the kind of stuff that's going on. But I think, again, we're just talking about stuff in general. So I think, like I said, we didn't really have, like, written guides that were scheduled. We just kind of, like, go on our thoughts about this kind of stuff. But yeah, so continuity is quite a big issue. But that was, like, the main gist of that kind of stuff. The continuity of it was just kind of like a weird thing about it. But I mean, like I said, I think Phil had written the story to not be too in-depth. It's not like something like, we're going to reference it again, like Arby and the Chief, where initially it was written very simple. Like just, okay, joke, end. Whereas now, there's a lot more depth into everything.
Yes.
The characters and stuff, there's a lot more depth to it. Phil is more of like the early Arby and the Chief, where it's literally just joke here.
And it's almost funny because it seems like Phil needs to make the same mature cycle that John did. Because think about John's mature cycle. Do you remember the pinnacle of the ridiculousness? Remember Endgame, Arby and the Chief, with the drug dealer, the cocaine drug dealer that was staying over John's house?
Yeah, it was so. Yeah, we're talking about John Graham, not John.
Yes, John Graham, the maker of Arby and the Chief, which we might actually dissect later. I'm spoiling all of our ideas, but it's fine.
Well, not spoiling because we don't know if it's going to happen.
Yeah, but it'll happen eventually, I'm sure. But basically, it's like this ridiculous scene where this Russian guy shooting this drug dealer in the house. The toys are watching it, and it's like this mess of like flour and blood, and like he's dying. Remember how long it took him to die? He's like, blah, 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 like he just keeps like, there's like shit coming out of his mouth, and even Arbiter says, just die already. And then that was supposed to be the end of the Arby and the Chief series. Like that was it. Like then they're moving to LA, and that's it. Like people felt betrayed, like, wow, that's really sucked, and that's why John realized, oh shit, that wasn't a really great way to end it. So then that's why he did a season 4, and he's like,
and then he had a season 5 and a season 6 and a season 7.
He did a season 4, and he's like, all right, guys, I think I'm taking the series in a different direction. Everyone responded so positively to the direction he did in season 4. Then he's like, oh, I feel motivated to do season 5. And season 5 was the first time there was a story for Arby and the Chief. The whole season was based around a story. And then PB's like, wow, people really like this. Now I'll do season 6. Then after season 6, he was so burnt out. He's like, all right, guys, one more season and that's it. So he's currently wrapping up season 7. But I think Phil would have to go through that cycle in order to get...
I think he would have just done that one off and that would have been it. I don't think he would. I think after he had done the Project 7 itself, after he would have done, we have no idea where the story was going. Like, we don't know who Deathface is. We don't know, like, any of that stuff. Like, all the big things, like, apart from the game, because now, like, they completely eliminated that from the equation in episode 1. But, I mean, still the big things, who is Deathface? That was, like, the biggest one. Who's Deathface? Will DSP get his gaming part back? Will there be some sort of intervention? Chris brought up an excellent point of what if the camera got stolen by someone like Deathface,
because the camera,
like
this is revealed in the second episode, Andre's camera, when he clicks the camera button, zooms you into the gaming world. It's basically the thing that teleports you back into the gaming world. And in episode 3, he uses this ability to zap a spray can into the gaming world, and in the gaming world, when he sprays it, it takes away Gaseous Snake's gas powers, and they're able to defeat him. So this camera has been shown to be useful. It's useful in episode 3 for helping them defeat this villain. So what if this camera was used against them? What if the Deathface figures out what they're doing and then captures Andre and then uses the camera to teleport? Or what if... Here's an idea. What if there's a car going down the street? He zaps the car into the gaming world, and then the car's still keeping its momentum, is going into the gaming world at them, and then they have to jump out of the way. And then it blows up, and Phil's like, damn, that was a close one. Wouldn't that be cool? I think that would be a really cool scene if that happened. Just
yeah,
playing
but
that
I mean,
out.
well, I think from what we had seen from every episode of Project 7 release, even including the prologues, they're very simple. Like, there was no room. Like, we were talking on episode 2 of the writer's block we're talking about here. I think it was episode 2, episode 3. I think it might be in episode 3 about plot, where plots can go, there can be so many twists and turns and stuff. Apart from, obviously, the big reveal, which would be who is Deathface, there really didn't seem to be any room in any of the episodes for any twists or any, shocking moments or whatever. Apart from the fact that you could argue that maybe, Mario being a bad guy could be, but it wasn't really, because literally seconds after you meet him, he's doing some rude hand gestures behind their back, so you instantly knew, oh, okay, he's a bad guy. There wasn't even any subtlety to it. It was just like, okay, there he is, he's been bad, there you go.
Yep.
So, I mean, it just seemed like every single episode is going to be like that. We're just going to be very simple, where everything was just going to be, laid out. Okay, here's what happened. They're going to start off here, they're going to have some conflict, there's going to be a main bad guy, they defeat the bad guy by some means, and then they get one of the gaming parts, and then they get transported to another world. Like that.
Yep.
Just, wash, rinse, repeat.
Yeah, it seems like the wash, rinse, repeat cycle. And the only two oddball episodes are episode 1 and 2. Episode 1 establishes the scene, and I think we're pretty much done talking about episode 1. The only thing, they have a gaming reference at the end. They, like Pete said, they almost yet again reveal what the mystery game was.
It was.
And then it ends just like the prologue one ends, with the no. This is a running... This is something...
That's the only thing that was actually continuous.
Continuous. The continuous thing is the no. At the end of every episode, Phil says no because something's going to happen, no, and...
They always end in conflict.
Actually, one exception. Episode 4 does not. He says no, and then he's like, quick, we gotta get out of here. So it does not end with no, it ends with quick, we gotta get out of here.
Yeah, well, yeah. Technically, yeah.
Technically, yes, technically. But anyway, yeah, so that's episode 1, pretty much, and then Deathface gets teleported in, tells him, yeah, your gaming powers are gone, haha, all those years. Apparently, the 2 years he was trapped in his condo stripped his gaming powers away. They figure out it's true. And then so episode 2, directly relating to that, basically they're testing the theory. Oh, did my gaming powers really vanish?
And honestly, yeah, this could have been a 1 minute segment. Honestly, this could have been 1 minute, but they literally spent 100% more than that.
They basically transition to every game. They go from Mario to a wrestling game, like Royal Rumble, I believe it was. They go to old games like Star Fox, and they go to really old games. And I'm sure old timers would probably be like, I remember that. It's like a shout out to old games and stuff. But it drags on way, way, way too much. It's just, and I think even Phil acknowledges this, that it was just way, way, way too much.
Phil says that was his personal favorite episode 2. And he said because it was just his playthroughs. But then that's also the biggest criticism. People were like, "There's too much gameplay."
Is the goal of Project 7 to be like your playthroughs, or is it supposed to be unique in acting?
I view that in the general story arc of Project 7, episodes 1 and 2 should have been set in the scene. They should have been the equilibrium and the change in equilibrium, where pretty much the first 3/4 of episode 1 was the beginning equilibrium, where DSP didn't know what was going on, and then Deathface's announcement that he had stolen his gaming powers. Then, that was the break in equilibrium, and then the chain of events is going to be the entire series where it's trying to get his gaming powers back. But I think episode 1 and 2 should have been just the opening parts, and so having episode 2 be fun fact, episode 2 is the longest episode of Project 7, I believe.
Yeah, and that's why, because it's just gameplay.
Yeah, and so for 10 minutes is literally just them going through every single game, and I guess what I would have liked is maybe 30 seconds tops on a game of every single genre that they were going to visit in Project 7. Now, I'm not sure if Phil had already outlined every single game he was going to go to. Maybe not in the order, because then it kind of would have been spoiling. But
Well,
yeah,
you
maybe
had the icons. Remember, they go to that loading screen. You
Yeah.
have the icons, like it's
I
like
think there's a Pokeball and
yeah,
stuff
there's
that they didn't
yeah,
use. And
yeah. There's a coin. There's actually
no coin. That was for Mario.
there's
That was
a
for the Mario.
there's the face of the villain, which is probably assumed to be the final level. Like, you go to his
Why
lair.
the heck is it the bomb? Why the heck is it the bomb? It's kind of weird.
It's like his
Nobody
lair.
did-
Like, oh, let's go to the villain's lair as like the final confrontation, like the final showdown kind of thing against Deathface would be probably.
I think there was like another gun in there that they didn't use. So I mean,
exactly.
So I mean, like, I think they could have used like 30 seconds of every single game. Let's assume the DSP knew what gaming world he was going to go into for the entire series. They should have played a game of every single from all those genres to show that he couldn't do it. And then, as you guys from the forums, a shout out to whoever said this in the forums, but someone actually said that maybe halfway through it could show Phil doing really well at the games that he was in the gaming part. He went to the gaming worlds for, but then he plays a game that he hasn't been to yet, and he sucks. And it's like, oh well. I guess we're not there yet, because he might think, oh, well, that's it, I've done.
So it's almost like that's actually a good idea, like catching the audience up to speed as to what's going on.
Yeah, it's almost like a recap as to, okay, this is what Phil has done so far,
Yeah, and like, they're all kind of waiting around, like, instead of just jumping from game world to game world, like, there's no break. They're going from game world to game world. Even Howard makes the comment, I'm so freaking hungry. Like, they just keep jumping to game worlds. Like, they're not taking a break. What if they have to go to the bathroom or get food, like Howard makes a joke of? Like, they're not taking a break. What if they say, Andre, let's just go back to fucking Howard's house. We're tired and we need to go to sleep. Like, and then almost do like a jump cut, like the next morning, like do a John Graham thing of the sunrise, and then like they get up, like like Phil, like rise and shine, and then Phil's trying to like maybe the opening to an episode can be Phil playing a game. Like, Phil, what are you doing? I'm trying to see what gaming powers I still have. Like, oh, I actually beat that level. I think I have my gaming powers for this one, and then they figure out, oh, I don't have my gaming powers for this.
As long as it's not 10 minutes long, I don't want another 10 minutes long.
It could just be a quick clip of, oh, I think that's where we have to do. Like, he fails at the level. I think he's like, John, we got to go to this world next. And Howard, Andre, let's teleport us there. And then
I think that could actually be a good moment as to when the camera could be stolen. Because maybe, he could use the camera first, and then literally immediately after that, they're like, oh, how about we go to this one? And all of a sudden they go to like the opposite one. They're like, wait, what? We didn't want to go there.
Yeah, why are we here? And then that would make a new plot thing, like, oh, and then they're in this new world, and maybe
they get a twist. And see, oh
my god,
we joke that we should be writers on Project 7 because we have all these like ideas and stuff of what could have happened. Yeah. Obviously, we don't want to like boast too much, but I mean, like, we kind of feel like, I think Chris was saying that he would actually be helping out in writing Project 7 because at that time he had been given the book, which by the way got a little cameo in episode 1, just FYI.
Yes, as the camera was focusing in on Howard, because the camera focuses on Howard with the PlayStation Move controller. If you pause before he's bringing his hands up, you can see because I gave a copy of my book to Phil, and he has it on his left counter table, and so you can see it as Howard's bringing his hands up. So
also, funny thing, another continuity error, Phil isn't holding the controller in that shot.
Yeah, his hands are on his knees. Yeah, but
I don't know why the heck they did that. Of all the shots to film not have the controller, that's the one that's kind of weird.
Basically, but the funny thing is, you can hear the sound effect. You can hear the But here's something. I mentioned at the beginning of the episode that I have been in talks with Phil, or I was in talks with Phil about Project 7 a year ago. And one of the things I texted him about that he actually never responded to was me wanting to help with the writing of Project 7. And I feel when maybe Phil saw that message and was like, no, you're just,
I think he felt that he had all, like, he doesn't need any more help.
Yeah.
Remember, that was the time when he declined the podcast invitation. Keep that in mind.
Oh, yeah,
and so he probably felt that he was on top of the world and that he didn't really need, anyone else's assistance. And so he probably felt, oh no, I can do the writing myself. People love the jokes and stuff, so obviously if I get anyone else to help write it, then they might ruin it, blah, blah, blah. So I think that was probably his mindset towards it. But yeah, so like those are some of the stuff that he could have done. But I mean, what we're left with is kind of like I was saying, a very simplistic, kind of like we kind of knew, you kind of like groaned because you knew what was going to happen. And any other thing like Arby's, heck, even like Schnozman and Hole Punch, you don't even know what's going to happen. Have you seen episode 5 of Schnozman and Hole? Like
yeah. The villain in that series is very well done. Like, I'm actually whoever does the acting for the villain in Snozman and Hole Punch does a phenomenal job. Like, I'm really, and now I don't want to talk about it too much because I don't want to deviate, but Snozman and Hole Punch, I really like the story development. Like, it has its witty one-liners. I think the Schnozman character kind of offers like the comedic aspect to it, just how like, you know, lackadaisical he is. But the whole Punch character is where the story is driven from. I like how they have the balance. John does it's funny for Rambo's acting and because he was the other half of the writing development of Project 7. For somebody who did that in Project 7 and how Project 7 turned out, Schnozman and Hole Punch just like it's just 700 times better, huh? Get it, 7, but 700 times better than just Project 7. Even Phil made a tweet on Twitter saying that Schnozman was better than anything they had done in Project 7. So
basically, the story, basically the whole premise of that was the story was right to this, and you kind of knew what was going to happen. You knew exactly, okay, we're going to meet this film, he's going to get beat, this is going to get some gaming powers back. And I think it's not until, I think that's why, if the series did continue, it would get very just stale. Because, I mean, you had maybe some people would be happy enough of just the same thing, maybe having like a variety of jokes and whatnot, and like, there's no sign of character development, no sign of like change in story or twists or anything. Like, no sign of anything in particular happening. Like, it kind of, they were aiming for one gaming world every episode, and I didn't expect any episode to be like a two-parter in a gaming world.
Yep.
And so, you just kind of knew what was going to happen, and because they had like a limited time slot, they're in there like 15 minutes, and because they're, as Phil says, they're not all capable of acting at the same time. So they all have to agree on a date for everyone to meet up and start acting and stuff and start doing some work. Then that's why it took so long for episodes to come out, and that's why episode 5 was delayed until October, which then got delayed until Infinity, because now we have no idea what's going to happen to the series. But yeah, I think the story was something that was just kind of like, it just was, like, you kind of got the Enigma effect in the fact that you didn't really know, like, you didn't know how they were going to do it. It's a case of like, how smart were they going to be? Like, episode 3 was I think that was really smart how they were able to defeat Cassius. They were like, oh, use the camera to guess.
Yeah, that was an interesting plot point.
Whereas episode 4, and I said this to Chris while we were watching, and I'll say it here, that I think that the fireball throwing Mario thing was very just out of place. Yes. And it seemed as if, like people argue that maybe, like, interaction between Mario and Deathface would have been quite good, because you had no idea what Mario's motive was, and
he wanted coins. He's like, Deathface.
Yeah, that's the only line. You only get one line out of it, and he has Deathface paid a mini a coin.
Yeah.
But I mean, like, I guess I don't have much of a problem with that, because I think it's kind of fully shown that Mario's intention was just to get rich and stuff, and that's why he has his Goma brothels and stuff.
And Mario, if you've played Mario does throw fireballs, so, you know, from that aspect it makes sense, you know.
But I mean, I just think that isn't the thing that Mario isn't well known for the most, and I think that maybe if he had something else, like maybe, like, you know, if he was, like, the most famous thing that Mario is known for is jumping on people, and so I thought that, because he eats a flower, and all of a sudden he's able to throw fireballs, which I've never seen Mario throw fireballs, that's because I've never really played Mario that much, so maybe some of you people might just say, oh, you're such a hypocrite, and stop and switch off, but hear me out. I just think that once he eats the flower, he should have, obviously he's known for, you know, like, getting really big after that.
Yeah.
So, maybe
maybe if he ate the flower, he could turn big, and then he's like a big giant trying to step on them.
Yeah, and he starts jumping. Yeah, that's what I was saying. And then, as soon as he grows small, then you have the Luigi cameo, which I still think is excellent.
Or maybe,
like,
I was actually, you know what's funny? I wasn't expecting Luigi to come in and do that. I was actually expecting, like, what's his name? Bowser? I was actually expecting him to get into, like, a fight with Mario, and then through the commotion, Phil and all of them would escape and get the powers.
Yeah,
that was what I was thinking. Like, Mario would get into a fight with someone else, and then they'd use, like, them distracted. Quick, they're distracted, let's get the stuff, and then da-da-da.
I guess for both of our reasons, that would have required too much video editing, I would say. I think that would be Phil's reasoning behind it. He'd be like, nah, it'd be too much video editing for them, because again, a fully functional Bowser in, or again, OJ to be much, like, that'll probably be a lot harder getting OJ to be much.
I think something we haven't mentioned yet is the people who are doing all of the editing of this respect the pack,
the camera
work. Yeah, they're just two guys with jobs that wasn't editing. Like, they did it as a hobby on YouTube, but it wasn't their full-time jobs, as Phil would say in his updates and stuff. That was part of the reason why Project 7 discontinued, because they were so burnt out from the series that they just didn't want to just continue it anymore. They were just like, we're sorry, but we can't do this anymore, kind of thing. So,
and so that's basically our incentive into it. And so I think, would you say that would be for story? There's quite a lot of stuff we can talk about, because I mean, we were very enticed in the series. Like, I think first of all, disclaimer here, we don't hate Project 7, because I think don't get that vibe that because we're criticizing it a lot that we hate it. Like, I still think it was pretty good. I don't think it was, like, amazing. I don't think it was amazing. I didn't even think it was great.
It was
but, I mean,
good for a first start. I mean, it was
it was
the
good
first
fan service,
yes.
I would say.
Yes, it was a good first start. And even Phil said it. This was a new thing he was doing, and he hadn't done those prologue episodes were bare bones. Didn't he was just kind of hacked together things. That's what he said. It was off the cuff what he did, and it had been years since, and this was new for him. All he had known for so long was pointing a camera at his TV and doing gameplay commentary, and that was it. So this was something brand new that was different for him and stuff. So, I can't blame him too much. You can't just demolish a guy. I mean, think about it. I'll say this. The first thing I ever wrote, technically the first book I ever wrote was a book called The Encounter, which was basically a story about Noah's father. And it was about how they found aliens in the center of the earth and all this stuff. But the story was hackneyed. It was 17 chapters long. There were aspects of the book that made no sense. There were characters, literally, there's a character that gets introduced at the very end that dies as soon as he's introduced. Like, it was just really bad storytelling. If Pete read it, he'd probably slap me. But let's keep something in mind. I was 12 years old when I wrote that. That was the first creative story I wrote from start to finish. But I had the notion to put that aside and start something new that was still connected to that universe. And then I went off of that and then made my new story. So it was a building process. I think time is the great healer for work. The greatest thing that we can take away from Project 7 is that time and dedication to your writing is what's going to take it further. Look at the dedication I had. I was 12 years old, wrote this book, The Encounter, which was 17 chapters long. Didn't do that great, in my opinion, story-wise and stuff. It was a great story, like, oh, look, a little kid wrote this and stuff, but it wasn't anything that was, an actual story that would keep you in. But as I kept writing and as I kept with it and as I practiced, I kept getting better at what I did. And that's the same thing with RB and the Chief. Look at that. It was just a couple of jokes and one-liners from the toys. But then as John did it more years, it started to become something more. It started to become a series with actual story and plot development and things you cared for. That's the point I think we can take away from this development and this dissection of Project 7. The more time you put into something, the more results you're going to get out of it. I love that, and I know Pete's going to chuckle at this, but Street Fighter. The more time you put into playing Street Fighter, the better you're going to get at it. Like, it's just...
That is true.
That's anything. More... soccer, if you want to get
I
better
would say that maybe people don't really get that because the editing is so top-notch that it doesn't really correlate with the actual product itself. I mean, you could have, like, the greatest ad campaign for a product that sucks. I mean, that's kind of what I feel about Project 7. Well, no, it doesn't suck, but I mean, like, I feel about Project 7 that the editing really outshines anything in the entire scope of Project 7. It just seems like the editing is like the be-all and the end-all. Like, you have the jump cuts, even though some of this stuff is kind of sloppy. Like, we talked about the continuity of some of the cuts, and some of the shots are really bad, where you'd see them do something, and in the next shot they're doing something completely different. Like for example, I'm trying to think of a prime example here. Like, we just mentioned about the hands thing. Like, DSP had his hands on his controller the entire time. Yeah, whenever they zoomed in on Howard's hands were on his lap. Like, it was kind of weird. There's other, like, I think there's too many to count. Like, there's too many to just name out here. But you'll see if you watch the episodes, like, sometimes they're kind of, like, clunky and they don't really fall nicely together in their place. And so, but I mean, apart from that, like, the editing itself, like, some of the, like whenever, like, John jumps on the Koopa Troopa, I guess, he jumps on it and it, like, explodes into, like, a pool of blood. Like, that kind of stuff is really cool and really neat. Like, Frogger getting ran over is another really neat thing. Or like the plant from Mario getting cut by Howard. Like, all that stuff just really outshines the stuff like the acting and the story. But I'd say it overshadows it, but it doesn't overshadow it so much that it becomes insignificant. Because like you said, story and characters are the bare bones and they're the biggest thing.
It's
in
the
a
bread
series.
and butter. Just like when you... I can't believe I'm making this reference. But just like the combos of some characters are the bread and butter of some people in Street Fighter, the bread and butter of writing in your story is the plot and the characters, really, if I could just say that just outright, make a comparison.
I mean, yeah, like I said, like...
Yeah.
DSP was in a very privileged position because he was doing it for his fans. It was fans. Episode 1 was just a complete love letter to his fans because there were so many references. Goldfish references to start the party, references to just everything. General gaming, such as John Rambo's Aperture Science joke or whatever, or the Dark Souls thing, or, actual inside references like what I just said before. Like, it was a complete love letter, and then trying to expand it out I mean, they did okay. Like we said, we don't hate it, but I mean, like, and like Chris said, you know, it's like it was like a work, like it was the first time that they had done something like this. So you have to give them some props for it. But yeah, but just some of the stuff that they did was just kind of like irked us. But I mean, we mentioned all that before, so I don't think we need to dilly dally anymore. So I guess for the second little part of this, which obviously won't be anywhere near as big as the first part. The story is obviously the big thing. I guess we'll talk about the characters themselves. So I guess we'll go over them. Like basically general. So we have 4/5 characters that are the big ones that appear in almost every episode. We got John, or so. Why did I mention John first? We got DSP, John, Howard, Deathface, and Andre. They're like the 5 characters that are in it quite a lot. Andre doesn't have that much of a significant role. Deathface kind of disappears after, like, he doesn't really do, like, he is nowhere near as big as a position. And obviously, DSP, John, and Howard are the 3 main characters of the series. So I guess in a like, we're not going to talk anymore about acting or anything. Well, we might talk about it in it. Like, we're not going to like feature it.
But in
much.
terms of look at the terminology we've talked about in past writer's block, we're basically going to explain. You know, all right, like remember the dynamic characters we talked about. Like, think of Gaseous Snake. He's not really a developed character. Like, what are his motives? Like, he's just the lackey of Deathface. He's just doing it just because, you know, he's in charge. You know,
he views him as like Ocelot, pretty much. He views him as like he views him as like his
he's
boss.
He's not dynamic. He's a flat character. He's not a dynamic character. He doesn't have any development to him.
I would argue that because they only had 10 minutes, they couldn't really fit that much development into it.
Exactly.
If Gaseous Snake was to be like the main villain for this part of Project 7 for like the first few episodes, then they'd have a lot more room for it. But I think that's something that was kind of inexcusable for them. But I think like for the other characters like DSP, Howard, and John, they have the opportunities, I think, to do some character development. But like I said, the story is so simply written that I doubt that any character development from is going to come from it. I think you could argue that in episode 2 when John's like consolidating Phil, that's kind of like a change in his character because John's normally like the badass, like he's all like, yes, I'm not afraid of anything. The fact he's actually like consolidating Phil, who by the way, I think that's one big thing I guess we might as well talk about. You could argue it's character development, but I would argue there's no continuity where, like we were saying at the very beginning, the DSP in the prologue episodes was all badass and egotistical and ignorant towards Deathface. At the start of episode of the actual Project 7, he just seems kind of like defeated, especially after he gets beat by someone at Super Turbo. Then you just kind of see a complete transformation. But I mean, even from like the very beginning of Project 7, he does have the off comment like about the facelift thing, but then he's all like down in the dumps and he's all like, oh, I've lost, you know, I can't do anything, I don't know what's going on, blah, blah, blah. It's a complete change in character from what he was in the prologue. And so, you could argue that, but then DSP just kind of remains stale. Like, obviously he's the main central character because they're trying to get his gaming powers and Deathface is his nemesis. But it's just still a case of, like, well, you still don't, like, you would know about him from his YouTube persona, but you don't really know much about him series-wise. If you're a brand new viewer, you have no idea who this guy is. You have no idea what you're supposed to think of him. Is he supposed to be like a hero, even though he's been in that position? But does he have the traits of a hero? Okay, maybe he's kind of like he's brave in terms of doing all this stuff. But I mean, he has like the off comments as humorous. But I mean, it's still just like he doesn't really have much like depth into it. And you could argue that that's time constraints, but I would just argue that maybe it's just a case of simple writing in the story that kind of like hinders him from doing anything like that, and whether or not he even wants to do something like that. So that's what I think about Phil in general. So I'm going to take a drink of water, so...
Yeah, that's fine. Yeah, you can take a break. I'll take it from here. Yeah, that's a good development for him. So, characters, you know, but as Pete said, we don't see much development of these characters. And again, what was the purpose of the series? Was it to be a cheesy web? If it's a cheesy web series, does the definition of a cheesy web series mean no character development? Like, we have to ask ourselves this question, because I think it's something that is sought after in any story, because Phil's telling a story, the story of a man who had this YouTube career, it's being threatened by this mysterious villain who takes his powers away, and now him and his 2 buddies have to go into the gaming world and get them back. That's the story. But are you going to add character development and all of these things that go into a story into it? And, you know, there's arguments as to why you would and wouldn't, but I think for any story, those aspects are essential. And Pete just gave you the rundown as to the specifics for these characters, and honestly, I mean, yes, they're things that you need for these characters if they're going to be developed and stuff. You know, I don't know if you said this, but there's that scene in episode 2 where Phil loses when he's playing Super Street Fighter 2 Turbo to that really fucking fucked up homeless guy, and then John's consoling him, saying, you know, look, Phil, you know, we'll get over this rush patch, we'll do gameplay together. And it was kind of sincere. Like, John did a good job, Phil did a good job, kind of all down in the dumps, depressed that, you know, it was true that he really did lose his gaming powers and all that shit. So, but I think the character development wasn't really stressed, and again, I think it's just because, like Phil said in the FAQ section, he said, this is based on us in real life. So unless Phil goes through character development in his own life, I think Phil's kind of saying, you know, we're not going to end the series and realizing anything. So I think that's why it might be hard, because think about it. This is a story, but it's kind of based on real life. So Phil would have to analyze how he himself would change, which is kind of big for anyone to just, you know, ask.
It's a very bold thing, especially for like your first series. I don't think you'd really want to undertake such a task.
Yeah, so I mean, I can understand in that regard why it would be difficult and such. So that's what I have to say about characters.
Phil's obviously the biggest one, so we have to have him with time on him. Rambo and Howard, if we were to put it into props roles, they'd be the helpers, obviously, because they're not the main focus, but they sure do help out. And if you guys remember, cookie points if you remember this, but in the helper section, there is opportunity for conflict and falling out, and if they initiate that could be very interesting in terms of twists and stuff. Like, what if one of them like all of a sudden like betrays them, or what if something happens between the three of them? But then you kind of think that they're so close-knit that it's never going to happen, and so that would probably be Phil's defense to that. But there's still room for it if it's there. I mean, it could happen. Like,
what if Andre? What if Andre betrays him because his character isn't really given?
Because Andre could be like the donor. Andre's the donor as it is, because he gives them like the opportunity, like the transportation to these gaming worlds. However, like I said, the donor and the false hero are so close together that he could easily just say, oh, but I work for Deathface, so I'm going to teleport you somewhere else. So maybe if it's not even the Caribbean scope, maybe it was just Andre betrayed them. You know, for all we know, it could be anything like that. And so, like I was saying, like, Howard and John, we might as well categorize Howard and John as the same person, because Howard is more of like is more the silly one, like he's more the doofus, he doesn't really know what he's doing, he doesn't know the consequences for his actions. Rambo's more the badass one, like he isn't afraid of anything, like, yes, I will do whatever it takes and stuff. And like, and it's funny because that kind of like reflects how he's like on YouTube anyway with the show. At that time, that was how he was actually like on his like show and stuff. Whereas Howard, I think he would have been quite hurt if someone said, "Oh, you're naturally stupid in real life" or whatever. I don't think he did like that. But yeah, but the two of them, they pretty much just help Phil around. They don't really have much. They have even less development than Phil, because they're just kind of like they're just there. They do like the stereotypical helper roles where they comfort the hero in his time of loss and stuff. They just kind of sit there and they rub his back whenever something bad's going on. So, like, you can't really say much about them. Like, they don't really do much. Sure, they help out. Like, they're firepower in episode 3, and they really don't do anything in it. Well, I guess you could say John Rambo does the leaf blower thing to the ghosts. But I mean, like, that could have been done by anyone. But yeah, like, so they don't do anything. I don't think any of them have done anything significant.
Yeah, like all they do is use the props to their advantage. That's really all they do.
So I mean, you can't really say much about them. Like, they're not really explained that much. Deathface is even less. So Deathface literally, like, you didn't know anything about him in the prologues, and you still don't know anything about him now. Apart from like it seemed like in episode 2 you finally got an incentive into who Deathface really is. Unfortunately, it was the typical like Justin Bieber loving, Twilight loving, basement.
Yeah. Who his mom? He lives in his mom's basement. Like this. Yeah, it's like this kind of.
It's all the cliche stuff, and that's one thing I didn't mention about just how cliche some of the stuff is.
Yeah, you know, I think we said that earlier on with the jokes and how cliche they were in some regard and whatnot. So. And so. Basically, Deathface, so you kind of get these, like maybe he's a sado and stuff, and this could all maybe entice everyone into finding out who he really is. Like, we know that this guy is like a basement dweller, we know that he likes Justin Bieber and Twilight, so he must be a really sad individual. And a load of people said, oh, it's going to be Steve Jones, who, if you don't really know that reference, then it's a long story. But long story short, Steve Jones was the one that got Darkside Phil, his regular YouTube account, down from YouTube. But anyway, I digress. But
either they could go with the easy route.
Yep.
Either way they go with the easy route, or they just go with like, or they just kind of, or it could just be a complete twist, which I completely doubt. But and then Andre is like the regular donor. He's like he has very little relevance because you don't know anything about him.
Yeah.
And I guess it's kind of what the donor's like. You don't really know much about the donor unless he plays a significant role later on, which it seemed like Andre wasn't really going to. And that's pretty much it. The villains are just typical.
So. Yeah,
stuff.
So we pretty much went through everything, plots, characters, we dissected Project 7, went through all the various ways that it could be done, ideas of our own that we offered. I'm going to make a concluding statement about Project 7, then Pete can give his ideas on Project 7, then I'm going to preface things that are going to happen next week just to get you ready for the big thing that we have going on next week. So, Project 7, good idea, good starting series for Phil, it's a step in the right direction for him. Honestly, he can't do it anymore because he doesn't have a film crew, but I think it was a good starting thing. But as I said earlier, if he had more time to do it, then he definitely would have found success. I think if he kept getting fan feedback, because you have to give him credit, the episodes did kind of get better as he went on and on. So,
well, episode 3 was really good, and episode 4 just kind of, you could see where it was coming from, but episode 4 seemed like a non-part. But there was the potential to be better.
There was the potential to be better. And, I had talks about... I was going to be in Project 7 Episode 5 as an actor. We had ideas to do this whole Halloween theme thing with some Scooby-Doo references and all that stuff. So it seemed like Project 7 Episode 4 was going to... Or 5 was going to kind of be like 4 and 3 combined in a sense. So I don't know. I guess congratulations to Phil or kudos to Phil for having the dedication, along with Howard and all the other people, John and Andre and Respect the Pack, for having the dedication to put this series together. It was a good run, but I think in the end, it could use some improvements, but that's basically our dissection of it. So, Pete, if you have any...
I guess, basically, I would say that it was pretty good. The premise of it was very smart, I think, where someone has to go to different gaming worlds to get his gaming parts back. I think it's very original. I'll give him credit for that. It isn't like some sort of cliche story that's been done 101 times. It was a very original premise. Some of the problems that we mentioned could have been fulfilled with expanded times, with longer episodes perhaps. Because they're only 10 minutes long, it had to make it very short and snappy. Especially episode 4, where it just seemed like you just kind of knew who Mario was, and all of a sudden he died. It was kind of like, oh well, okay. And if they maybe extended it, perhaps I call it the TV run, where it's 30 minutes. Pre RB and the Chief episodes, where they were 30 minutes long. If they had stuff like that, then maybe it could have been a lot. Then maybe they could have fixed some of the problems that we had mentioned before. But yeah, I still think if it would have continued, it had the potential to be as good as it was. And I think before we're going to have one final question to Chris regarding Project 7.
Yep.
And I'm not sure if you want to make this quicker or not, but if Project 7 Episode 5 was to happen, and Phil went to you and said, how do you want the episode to go, how would you respond?
I would probably say that that maybe there should be a character in the haunted house that they were going to do that should be focused on a little bit more than maybe Gaseous was. But they definitely need to explain some things about Andre. Basically, the focus of the episode needs to shift. A lot of the things that we said during the course of this writer's block episode, basically all the improvements. Now, it wouldn't be a complete rehaul, but just little changes. I don't think we would have had to make a huge transformation in episode 5, because anyone viewing the series at that point would have been like, whoa, this series changed, holy shit. I think little changes here and there, if you kept adding progressively over the course of the next couple of episodes, the audience would have noticed. And they would have been little changes, but they still would have impacted the series. So I think that is the central way that Project 7 probably... I
also think that if Episode 5 ran the exact same way as 3 and 4, then people would have started thinking, this is getting it's starting to get kind of stale now. And then DSP would have started to panic, because they were like, oh, well, what do we do now? And then you could have had that fear being a complete overhaul and being even worse than what it was before. So, yeah basically that's the Project 7 thing completely wrapped up. We may do more of these in the future regarding other internet stuff, because we do have a few in mind.
We did mention some of them during this episode. Schnozman and Hole Punch by John Rambo, potentially RB and the Chief by John Graham, which will be concluding this summer, so that might be a perfect opportunity to do it. However, P and I have a very big announcement to make, because we are actually, for the first time ever on the Writer's Block, we will be having an interview. We will actually be interviewing somebody who has never been on the Writer's Block. He will, for the first time, you'll have a trio. For all the Writer's Block episodes, it's been a duo, just me and Pete.
Yeah.
You'll actually have a trio. His YouTube account name, I don't know the numbers after it, but I know it's
I know what it is.
Band
Basically, it's Band Geek 8408.
Okay.
That's his name.
Yes, and
Matt?
his name's
Matt,
Matt,
we know
yes.
it.
And basically, we won't go into detail about what he does, but basically he reviews literary works and movies and stuff. And Pete, I have to give a lot of credit to Pete, that he messaged him, reached out to him, wrote a big, giant message, kind of similar to the message I got back when he wanted me to be on his podcast, wink, wink. And basically outlined what we do and asked him to be on, and he responded positively and even said that he'd promote the writer's block and tell people that he was going to be on it. So I'm very excited.
I didn't expect it to be so quick as well. So I've been a fan of the guy, for quite a long time. I love his books versus movie reviews is what it's called, and it's excellent, very, very well done, very well editing, very good story wise. He's a very avid movie and literary lover.
Yep. Hello? He's a very big literary movie and big lover and...
Yeah, but what's going on? Are we having a problem? You having a problem?
Yeah.
Yes, I can hear you. I can hear you. I can hear you. I can hear you.
Skype
I can hear you.
Alright, I can hear. Alright.
You can hear me now?
I think this is the part of the episode where Skype goes into the fucking Twilight Zone. So
I'll just stop very quickly. Okay, so if you have any questions for the guy, check out his channel. We'll probably link the Project 7 episodes and his channel in the description. So by all means, check him out. He's an excellent guy. So if you do that, then I'll give you a nice big high five in response to that. And so we look forward to that. It'll be like an interview / talk, pretty much. It won't be like a strict formal tell me about yourself. Like, it'll be nice and relaxed. It'll be similar to what it is now.
So, alright, that's it for the Writer's Block episode 6.
Yeah.
And,
just very quickly, we actually have a Writer's Block section on TheAireaidLord.com.
Yes, finally, on TheAireaidLord.com, I did put a Writer's Block section. Yes, it's still there. It's just an organization of the episode, so I guess I'll be adding this episode to it. So, alright, this has been Pete and Chris. Project 7 Dissection for episode 6 of the Writer's Block. I hope you enjoyed. Thank you for bearing with us. Next week, Band Geek interview. I'm looking forward to it a lot, so thank you and stay tuned for that. And we will see you later.
Peace.